Welcome back to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexualized times. My tongue feels lazy, and that was very poor enunciation. I apologize. Today, Benji and I are unpacking the idea of self-soothing, because there's productive self-soothing, ways of making yourself feel comfortable, helping to get through difficult times, and there's very unproductive self-soothing, most of which is what we do. We tend to gravitate towards the non-productive self-soothing. And so we wanted to kind of help you to distinguish between the two and help you to give you some suggestions on what positive self-soothing would look like. And if you have ideas, please let us know. Things like, prayer, meditation, hunduke, things like that. It's on the list of productive ways of dealing with discomfort and soothing your soul, rather than soothing your body through chemicals in the form of junk food or, porn, masturbation, these kind of things. So we really want to help you to see yourself more clearly. When do you soothe yourself in unproductive ways? And how can you soothe yourself in much more productive ways so that you can have sustained fulfillment in your life, which is always the goal here. So let's get into it, everybody. Follow me to another journey of high noonisms and fun and amusement here on the podcast. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the episode starring Andrew Love, everybody, and Benjy Oyama, everybody.
Yeah, welcome back, Shannon. Yeah.
Nice to see you all. Nice to see you, Susie. Nice to see you, Larry.
Kazu, don't forget Kazu.
Kazu, Hitoshi.
Reina. Thank you, Reina, for being here.
All the Ngandu.
David, all the Davids.
Family.
Thank you.
Hey,
we know.
Nice to see you all. Benji.
That's good.
We haven't traveled that much, but you're about to travel. I'm about to travel. By traveling, I mean for High Noon, right? High Noon's been mostly online. But if you're listening to this is going to be right before something big. Do you want to first talk a little bit about this 24-hour dealie?
Dilly Do. It's 24-hour, first ever that we know of podcast. It's going to be streaming for 24 hours, which is an entire day, I think.
This is a less.
I haven't actually looked into it, how many hours in our day you'll get, but I hear it's around 25. So we are going to be doing that this coming April 6th, Saturday, 24 hours. And people can join in anytime they want for different topics, such as sex and God and theology and love and intimacy or lack of intimacy for some couples. And so a lot of juicy subjects that you guys are not going to want to miss out on. We're going to talk about everything.
Yeah, it's going to be live online, so you guys can chat with us too. We just, so it's the 9-year anniversary for High Noon, which is bananas. It honestly is frightening because it's one of those cliches where it was a long time, but it happened quickly. And we've done a lot in that time, and we wanted to celebrate that. We're very ambitious, and so we still haven't saved the world yet, so there's always more to work on. But every once in a while, it's good to look back and be like, well, where do we come from? Where do we go? We went on a lot of crazy twists and turns throughout this journey. So to celebrate that, we want to talk to a variety of people about different things pertaining to sex, which, come on, how fun is that going to be? So you're invited to that. But after that, there's going to be a bunch of traveling. You're going to the UK.
Yeah.
We're going to have actually 3 events in Europe in the next month or so. United Kingdom, it looks like Poland is going to be solidified, and also in Czech is loosely in the works right now. And then Wolfenburg there's going to be like a whole Latin America tour. Come on, there's a bunch of stuff, When the world is calling us, then we answer. We're like the Ghostbusters, except we don't have the ectoplasm mobile thing. whatever that their car was. We have the Ecto. I think it was called the Ecto. We have, I don't know. We just got planes and whatever. We got everything else, so we can get around the world, and we will.
Okay. High speed, high noon, highway, planes.
Yeah, we're looking into buying a jet. We've been searching all the Goodwills that we can find, and we haven't found one yet. Looking for secondhand, rough shape. I mean, Sammy looks like he's pretty good with computers, so he can probably reboot it. Anyway, let's get into it. Today I really wanted to talk.
By the way, Andrew, people love our riffing.
I don't know that they do or should.
I know they do. Come on, guys.
I just, I'm the kind of guy that absolutely will start an email. In the past, I was famous for, so here's what I'm thinking, and I'll just get right into it. And then people were like, how about a hello? Just a hello. And I was like, oh, yeah. So now I have to remember to say, hey, how are you doing? So I was thinking, still same message, but just a little bit of a segue. Mm-hmm. So just some banter back and forth before we get into the meat of the topic, which is about self-soothing. Because recently I was conversing with somebody and they referred to masturbation as a form of self-soothing. And from a certain perspective, that makes total sense, right? That's why you would do it, is to make the bad thoughts go away, right? That's why you're masturbating. You feel somewhat uncomfortable and you want to feel comfortable, so you masturbate, right? You have urges in your body, and so you want to feel different, so you masturbate. So, or, we'll get into different forms of self-soothing. But my immediate reaction was also like, is that soothing? Because we know from doing this stuff that you don't feel great after. You lose a lot of energy. You lose a lot of that beautiful energy that wants to create life. It's just squandered. It's wasted. And you're left with a lot of feelings of regret, doubt, self-worth issues, just a tremendous amount of downside. So in essence, it's probably the least soothing thing that a person could do is masturbate. It doesn't soothe you in any deep and meaningful way, is what I'm trying to say. It soothes your body. And that was the distinction that I wanted to kind of explore, is things that we do that soothe our body in the short term, but make our spirits agitated or our emotions agitated. And that's another crazy thing, is people who watch porn a lot and who masturbate a lot, they become very agitated. Life triggers them and they need to self-soothe, in air quotes, but it's just making them even more agitable. And so we want you to really understand these distinctive kind of categories and figure out where you're self-soothing for body, which will obviously make your spirit agitated, and also which ways in which you can actually self-soothe your spirit.
We're trying to find ways to soothe that is short-term and long-term, which is another way of thinking, right? Short-term, it is soothe. So is doing cocaine. It's like, pick your drug. But if you think about, is it soothing to your soul, but also physically, is it soothing, long-term speaking? Because it's like you're saying, you're creating a dependency on something just to feel something. And that irritability is real. The stress is real. The compounded emotions that are never dealt with for many years, over decades, compounds to the point where you don't know how to deal with life without it. It's a pacifier. Becomes a pacifier and dependency.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what I always say is like, well, I enjoy it. That's the ultimate trump card that the brain or the self or that side of us says when you want something. Like, it feels good. It's like a child. It's like, well, I want it. Right? You could justify, you could rationalize, you could battle in your brain all you want, but at the end of the day, when you're about to act out and do that thing, the ultimate trickery the brain plays is, well, I want to do it. It feels good. And then I always ask, mentees that we're working with in our programs, like, well, does it feel good 10 years down the road? Does it feel good in your marriage that you've developed, this dependency to the point where you need it inside your marriage when you're raising children? How has this habit, impacted your life and in the long term, for the last many years that you have it? Do you really feel overall, overarching your story is like this is really soothing? It is really soothing that I have this addiction. You know?
Yeah.
Usually.
Yeah, well, that's Uncle John Williams, the OG director of High Noon, often called porn and masturbation like a blankie, the whole experience of a little kid with a blankie. Because when you have this blankie as a little kid, you can do more daring things, right? You can go into the dark to go pee at night by yourself if you got your blankie because you feel secure. It's a false sense of security that you're attributing to something outside of yourself. But it's kind of like the placebo effect because it's not the blanket itself doesn't have protective powers. It's not like Harry Potter where they're magical materials where you can become invisible or more powerful or whatever. It's just your belief in this thing, right? In this case, a blanket. This is my lucky blankie, or this is my bunny wabbit, right? You feel stronger with it, right? But in reality, you're becoming dependent on it for that feeling of security. And of course, as a little kid, it's fine, whatever. We're not here to judge you little kids. All you 3 and 4-year-olds listening today, we're not here to judge you at all. It's cute. My kids never really had anything like that. But I think it's adorable when kids walk around with, a blankie, especially when they're really ratty and old. Have you ever seen those kids that they have this disgusting blanket? But it's like, okay, at what age does that stop being all right? When you have a CEO or an executive of a company, and before he gives his big speech about the financial status of the conglomerate that he's a part of, he has to take out his blankie, right? There's obviously a window where it's not, where you need to stop being reliant on your blankie for courage. And with humanity as well, we need to stop being reliant on self-soothing, and that's through all varieties of addictions, in order to feel loved and healthy and easeful.
Yeah.
So what are some, let's start with the negatives. Let's start with the self-soothing the body. What are some, there's obviously porn, right? There's obviously masturbation. Anything else that you can think of?
Fantasy. I was talking with someone about that recently.
Explain.
Well, it's a common thing that people face. It's a form of escapism and addictions, particularly sexual fantasy, but any type of fantasy where it becomes a dependency. So the specific example is that there's a couple that is separated currently, and the husband is asking, like, is it okay to fantasize about my wife? Well, not really, masturbating or anything like that, just fantasizing sexually about her. And of course, I'm hesitant to ever say yes or no to anything like that because there's always more to our sexual desire. There's desires under the desires. And there's always more to our history. Always. It's much deeper than we think. And so I always will ask a series of questions to help really get to the root of what it is. And then I will ask the question, like, what do you want? Right? There's a free will that you have. You can do anything you want. The rest of the world is justifying the crap out of it. And everyone will say, of course you're justified to fantasize about your wife. Of course. But I asked them, like, what do you want? It's like, well, I would rather not fantasize about my wife because I don't want to have that habit because it's self-soothing, essentially. It's for myself. It's not really for her. She's not actually involved in this fantasy. Physically, her image is involved, right? And he's like, well, I'd rather not do this because I don't want to bring that habit dependency on soothing into my marriage, into my relationship when we are not separated, we're living together. And so I was like, that's your answer. And that goes for everything. That's like masturbation, especially masturbation, because that one's a little less understood as to why it can be harmful, because people will justify the crap out of, well, masturbating without porn, it's fine. It's normal. It's actually healthy and encouraged by lots of people. There are endless amounts of TED Talks and articles from WebMD that talk about the benefits of masturbating, and then they talk about the risks at the very end in a tiny little box. They always do. Look at these. I'm not kidding. Look at these videos. But there's always a disclaimer at the end talking about the risks. And then they don't notice that it's like those risks apply to pretty much everybody that masturbates. So identifying, like, we always talk about this in Hainan because it's true that if you have a North Star about what you really want, utilize that God-given free will to your advantage and say, like, well, I don't want to masturbate. I don't want to fantasize. And that's all you need to start. That's all you need. Because that's the ultimate trump card. Like, when we talk about this brain, you know, people like to talk about the brain and the addiction field, especially porn and sexual addiction. Really, that's the brain is just trying to get you to do it because you want to. It feels good. But at the end of the day, just say, well, I don't want to do it. That's not the woman or man that I want to be, because that's not my life. That's not the marriage I want. That's not the person I want. And that's really enough. That should be enough for us to say, okay, I don't want this. And I'm going to do something about it. And so you're talking about the blankie, and I realized, like, for that CEO that's not taking a blankie, it becomes something else. It becomes another manifestation of the soothing that happens.
Well, it becomes a drink. Yeah, it becomes stroke of the ego, something like that. Yeah,
work.
It's more nuanced.
Yeah,
it could be workaholic.
It's celebrated. That's the thing, right? It's celebrated. To mass, it's so subtle. It's so subtle. It's incredible.
But I'd like to unpack this a little bit more, like, because first of all, we are releasing next quarter a 40-day challenge, y'all. Shout out. This is like a mid-roll advertisement, but it's going to be 40 videos for 40 days, and it's for newcomers to High Noon. So if you guys don't find yourself yet in a program, this is kind of like the appetizer for the main course, because you'll get a lot of the major informational, educational components of High Noon without the community, which is really the heart and soul of what we do. But I was shooting a video for that, and it was about fantasy, because there's actually productive fantasies that you can have. Like, prayer is essentially a fantasy. You're not actually sitting down and speaking with a physical person. You have to imagine to some degree who God is to you, and what like, when I started praying, I just remember asking my spiritual mother, like, who am I talking to? Like, do I say it out loud, or like, what are we doing? Because imagine I was 27 and I had never prayed in my life before. And so I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Help me. And it requires some imagination. But there's fantasies that connect you to your reality and help you to cope with reality head on. And there's other fantasies that take you away from reality, like a little vacation. And when you return to reality, now all of a sudden it's worse, or the problems are still there. It doesn't alleviate your problems. It's a vacation. And those fantasies are not productive. But in terms of soothing, like, why would somebody fantasize, right? I want to unpack that a bit, because it's so obviously prevalent. You could just be sitting down, you go into work or to school, you're in a car, or you're on a bus, or you're on your bicycle, or you're on a skateboard. It's so easy to get lost in some fantasy. So why would we do that, and how is it self-soothing?
Yeah, I think it's helpful when people do fantasize, especially people that don't want to do it, or masturbate or whatever, is identifying the moments they do that. Like, what are the internal triggers, as we call them? There are external triggers that people usually point to, saying like, oh, I saw this thing on the socials, and it triggered me and I started fantasizing about, or I saw this person, whatever. But noticing if someone is wise, and people that join our programs are wise, and they notice very quickly that there are more internal states that they're in, usually when they see those things or have those external encounters, that they notice, like, oh, interesting. I start fantasizing when I am alone at home and no one's around. Interesting. So it's feedback. It's like live feedback from ourselves that there's something that is not being addressed, that is fantasizing is adding a form of, I want to say, escapism, essentially, right? At least the unhealthy forms of fantasizing, which is escape. And so the next natural question is like, okay, what am I escaping from, right? If people are semi-smart, have half a brain, like, what am I escaping from? And that's what we're trying to help people do in our programs, especially. It's like, I don't know how to be lonely. I don't know how to use loneliness, which is not a bad emotion. It's unpleasant for sure. But probably we're given loneliness for a reason, so that we'll not be alone, basically. And then, but if someone's like, okay, I'm going to go masturbate when I'm lonely, instead of connect with a person, which is what loneliness is meant for.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, now we've really misused the emotion that was given to us, which is a motivator to help us to freaking find a partner or a family or a tribe, brothers, sisters, just people. And people don't think, like, honestly, hundreds of people I mentor, Andrew, it's like people are blown away when I'm like, well, loneliness is not bad. Really? Like, no, it's very unpleasant. Yes. But there's a reason you're lonely. It's feedback. It's something that God gave you. And if you didn't ever be lonely, you'd probably not survive very, very soon. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. And so definitely sexual fantasy is a big one. But think about, when you go on social media, you see somebody who has a really nice car, or they have that dream life that you want. They're by the beach, and there's two ways you can take that. You can start fantasizing about, I want to become a productive person who's also successful. So what can I do now in order to create that success in my life? And then if you funnel that into healthy, productive action, great. But most people, honestly, start to use their fantasy to attack themselves, because they imagine, like, part of them wants that, whatever is presented in the form of social media. So like the cool life or whatever. But then they actually start to fantasize about how crappy they are as a person. It's a form of a fantasy. Like, I suck for these reasons. You start to have all these flashbacks to all the failures in your life. That's all fantasy. That's in your imagination, right? You start to project the future about how you're always going to be a failure or whatever. That's why so many people get depressed from social media, is because of fantasy. Because first of all of these people are projecting a fantasy online. Like, the pictures are a fantasy. It's not real life. It's just a snapshot of 1 second of your life. But you see that 1 second of somebody's life, and you're like, they are perfect, right? And then now their fantasy is getting into your brain, and you're having a fantasy. So their fake version of their life is now going into your brain, and now you're having a fake version of your life. And it usually works against you.
Yeah.
Again, is it bad for somebody to post a great moment of their life? No, not at all. But how you interpret that and the fantasies that you have around that really do matter, because most people, their instinct is to compare their lives against 1 second of that person's life and start to fantasize about how terrible they are, which is not true, because God doesn't think that, right? God sees nothing but potential. There's nothing but potential for you in your life, but you can feel like you're so far away from your hopes and your dreams. And that is the key moment when most people end up going to porn or want to go to porn, is because of that feeling that fantasy is giving them, that fantasy that they suck, because that's a fantasy. They don't suck. Nobody sucks. There's not a single person in this world who sucks. Even the most evil person has participated in some sucky behavior, right? Some terrible, sinful, evil behavior, selfish behavior, like you talking about heinous criminals, whatever. But they don't inherently suck. That's a foregone conclusion of evil and of fantasy, is that person sucks or I suck. And we always feel like we suck, and that's a fantasy. And when you can realize that, then you change the fantasy to be like, imagining a better life for yourself. That's part of fantasy. That's a healthy life. That's a healthy fantasy, right? If you're single, imagine that you can imagine your future. I'm in a healthy, happy, beautiful, blessed family. That doesn't exist. It's not real, but it's a fantasy. And if it causes you to get up and start doing really great things with your life so that you can be a part of a great blessing, then fantastic. That's a great fantasy. But again, a lot of people are like, they want that thing, they want the blessing, But then they start to fantasize about how they'll never get the blessing because they don't deserve it, because it's their neediness and their pain that's driving the fantasy. So I think after that soliloquy is over, what you can boil it down to is, what's the sponsoring emotion of your fantasy? If it is a negative emotion, like a neediness or a not good enoughness, and then you start to fantasize based on that feeling, then your fantasy is going to eat you alive. And it could come in the form of sexual fantasy, because all sexual fantasies are about you being strong and powerful, or being dominant or dominated or whatever, based on an emotion, which is usually, I'm sad and lonely and I'm not good enough. So then you start fantasizing to remedy that. But again, if the sponsoring emotion of the fantasy is, I want to do something great with my life, and you start imagining what that is, you start praying about it, you start meditating about it, and you start doing great things with your life, that's powerful. And it's a necessary component. Fantasy is a necessary component of success. I mean,
but
absolutely.
Yeah, the trap, I will call it a trap, of media is that it's almost all fueled by fantasies that are not genuinely good for us. So think about most of course it depends on people's algorithm individually, but most of the content as a whole, it's sex, make money, and enjoyment, entertainment, right?
Sure.
That's most of it. And of course people are like, well, I watch really educational stuff about history. Okay, sure. How much, it's like you said sex, I was like, it's siphoning our attention from stuff that matters. And I'm not a big tech is evil guy at all, by the way. These companies are just businesses trying to make a profit. That's what they do. That's their job. And we are feeding the algorithm based on what we're interested in. Because if we weren't interested in pornographic stuff, porn wouldn't exist. If we weren't interested in degenerate stuff on the internet, whatever, it wouldn't exist. Televised sports wouldn't exist. So I'm not saying that's evil, by the way. I'm just saying that we are the algorithm. And the companies are just trying to make a profit, right? I don't think they're evil. But it's true that most of the content we consume is just taking our attention and putting on stuff that doesn't really matter in life.
Yeah.
And just makes us focus and fantasize about stuff that isn't really aligned with what is productive and healthy for us, right? Like how many people follow, like really, truly good content that is good for your soul and you feel like connected and alive and loved, and like to God. I don't know how much content of it is, but it's probably a sliver of what's on the internet and a sliver of what people actually consume. If you are on it, right?
It's true. Yeah,
my solution is get off all of it. That's what I've been doing. I'm going to keep going.
Benji's an extremist.
I'm going to keep talking about this, guys. I'm serious. This is like my number one piece of advice for anyone I talk to ever.
We've got a GoFundMe for Benji to get a really nice rocking chair for his front porch and a gun. Get off my lawn. Big tech is coming from the chicken.
I have a bow and arrow on my back porch, and I'm currently trying to shoot squirrels with it.
All right.
Kids, I'm going to start shooting squirrels. And he's always like, no, you're not. I'm like, I totally am. And I just go out there and I try. I can't get them. But,
so PETA's going to be knocking on your door after this episode.
I want to say though, I do watch shows. That's like my piece of relaxation and enjoyment because I'm not a psychopath. I like watching just silly shows. I'll watch like one show per evening, like before bed, and that keeps me happy and entertained. It's like,
sure,
it was like Dragon Ball and then Rick and Morty and Lord of the Rings. We just finished the trilogy again with my wife, and so there's always something that I'm doing. But it's not the difference between that and media is that social media is endless. It's endless.
Not curated. Like it just comes at you. You don't choose it; it chooses you.
Exactly.
But before, like, to get into the what your content is that you're consuming, just understand that it's all data points that is helping you to create a worldview, and that worldview will eventually be fantasized upon. We are imagination-based creatures. That's how all great inventions came about. It's all like the advancement of civilization is always based upon the question of what if? What if this? And then we try it out. And there's some good people who do it, and they create things like electricity or airplanes or whatever, right? And then there's also evil people who are like, what if we exterminate a certain type of people and those people become Nazis, right? Or it's purely based off of conjecture, which is based off of imagination. So when you look at your algorithm and you look at your content intake, is it feeding your imagination to be aligned with your goals and your ideals? A high noon life, right? A Chanuguk. My God, Chanuguk, we're trying to create the kingdom of heaven on earth. Guess what? That's going to require a whole lot of imagination and fantasy. To imagine that the world is ever going to be different than it is right now requires you to not focus on what is right now and to fantasize about another world that will be, but you can't use that as an escape from this world and hope that things are going to pan out, because people use religion for that all the time. One day, we're going to everything's going to change and we don't have to do anything. That's fundamentally against the principle. The principle says we got ourselves into this mess. It's excruciatingly painful for God, but we are the ones that have to rise up and mature into people who can fix this mess. And we have to do that with fantasy, but with reality and essence and substance. So I think beauty and art is a fundamental component of that process of having a healthy imagination, but not all art is created equally. I don't believe that you can watch a Marilyn Manson video and then go and create something productive with your life. I just feel like he's just a man with a lot of raw emotion that he's never resolved most of his stuff, and he's giving you that. All of his unresolved hatred and, misanthropy and all that, he's giving that to you through his music. But it could be any artist. Most artists, they don't give you answers, healthy answers. They give you questions. And think about in your algorithm too, how many people are giving you answers that are productive to you reaching your goal? And if not, get rid of them. Benji's extreme about get rid of all social media. If you can't do that, and I don't do that. I still have Instagram. I check in. But hold on. Yeah. I would suggest really curating the people that you follow, the voices that you hear, so that they fully support your worldview of a high noon life and of a Chanuguk life. And I just followed a guy and I showed him to my kids on Instagram. He's this young guy from America, and he's building a generator in his backyard that converts plastic waste, just plastic bags or whatever, into diesel fuel for cars. And he's already doing it. He's already created the fuel. Now he's just building bigger and bigger generators. His medium to show everybody is Instagram. How crazy is that? It's so cool. He's got a platform. He would never be given a show on television or anything like that. He's just a young guy. He's like 20 or something. Yeah. But he's unbelievably smart, but you wouldn't tell by how he looks or how he talks or who he is, but he's doing cool stuff. And so that guy, I showed him to my kids on Instagram. I never showed them Instagram, but I showed them because look at what this guy's doing. How fantastic is that? So if you do curate the right voices, they will feed data points into your mind that help you to create a worldview. And then if you fantasize off of that worldview and live up, like you do action in support of your fantasy, then that's productive, extremely productive.
Yeah, I agree. It's a lot of productive stuff. I think you have created a good algorithm because you have a good mind that is welcoming and good algorithm. But I say this to people that are struggling with porn addiction.
Sure.
It doesn't make sense to me that people spend any time on social media if they have an addiction, because it's the same as an alcoholic that is just hanging around the bars, the nightclubs, just hanging around. And they're like, I'm just going to drink water just to socialize. And they make these reasons. And it's like, I remember when I opened my Instagram account and I told it my age and my gender, and the first thing it showed me was a reel that was raunchy, sexual nature. I was like, they know nothing about it. You know what I'm saying? That was the first thing. I was like, man, we're screwed. So I just deleted it immediately.
No, I hear you. Yeah. And even if you have even if you're pretty stable with your sexual integrity, but you have a habit of wasting time online, it's better. So I have one guy in one of my groups actually who is one of your mentees, Benji. Shout out to Benji. Benji gave his recommendation of getting all social media out of his life. After 2 weeks of doing that, he realized that he's not losing anything, right? He's like, actually, I realized that it didn't impact my life at all. He said the only thing I'm missing is there's one Instagram channel that his friends communicate on about memes. So he misses those memes. And I was like, so your meme game is suffering, but there's a small price to pay, right? For peace of mind. So the reality is the trade-off is really skewed in the favor of social media, right? That you don't really lose that much by kicking it out of your life. They lose everything because that's their entire existence and business model. But for the most part, unless you have a business online that is heavily impacted by social media, you're not losing anything or very little by just kicking it out of your life entirely.
Here are the two biggest lies that media tell us and we tell ourselves. It's good for education and it's good for connection. I've heard all of them, both of those in particular. I educate myself and I connect. I'm like, well, how many hours do you spend a day? On average, it's 2 to 4, right? The American standard, at least. If you spend 2 hours a day actually talking with a person, how would you feel more connected or more connected through Instagram, right? And so people are staying on these platforms because they literally think they will have no connection with people. Gotta check out the profiles of my friends and see what they're posting. And it's like, it's pretty ludicrous to think that that's the only way to connect nowadays, you know?
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. I have a super cool life hack I want to share with you guys, just because I've never shared this with someone, but I want it to be known. You can search YouTube videos on Google and watch it directly in Google, which is what I do. You don't have to go to YouTube. And so it saves you the whole like rabbit hole thing where you watch a bunch of videos. So anytime I want to see something, like how to do something, I'm very deliberate. And that's the point, like being mindful about it. Google search, how to do this video.
How to shoot a squirrel with a bow and arrow.
Yes.
Well, yeah. Let's go. I want to make sure that we cover this because soothing the body is what we're talking about. And you have to understand food is like that. Junk food is absolutely like that. How many times have you ended up in the kitchen or wherever you keep maybe your pantry or whatever, and you're just there, you've eaten, you've got enough food for the day, but you're looking for something. You're looking for that snack that's just going to put you in the right state. That's not because you're hungry. There's like chemical reasons for that, right? But you're attributing a snack to a certain feeling, right? And that's definitely your body's sending that signal out, pretending that it's something deeper, right? You're like this need for satiation is overriding your good reason. So food can fall into the self-soothing, right? How many people self-soothe? It's famous, like the pint of ice cream in your freezer for those difficult days. People soothe themselves with ice cream. So looking at food, looking at social media, looking at porn, masturbation, looking at fantasy, like Benji was saying, even gossip for some people is like self-soothing, is talking about other people instead of talking about yourself. I had a good talk with somebody the other day, and they were talking with this leader in our movement who was just gossiping about all the other leaders. And I said, well, why do you think he was doing that? And he couldn't really answer me. Because it's not obvious. When somebody gossips, it's like, oh, they just want to gossip. But actually, what they're saying is, I care. I care about this thing that I'm gossiping about because I want to connect about it. I care enough to remember it. I care enough to share it. So there's something about me that wants to participate in it, right? And it's a very petty part of yourself that does this. Because maybe you care a little bit, not enough to fix it or do anything, but enough to gossip about it. Still shows that you do care. So even something like gossip is you're communicating, but not about deep things or about yourself, but about other people. That could be a form of self-soothing. Like, I look at what these people are doing that's bad, which makes me not feel so bad. Now I'm more justified because now we're all in this together. We're all just terrible, right? But gossip doesn't ever feel good to hear or to, not in a good way. Like if you have an enemy and you heard that enemy is suffering in life, it can make your really petty, fallen self feel good for a moment, but it doesn't make your soul feel good. It doesn't make your spirit feel good. So it could even be something as trivial as gossip. So the point in this first bit is, where do you self-soothe in a negative way? Okay? It could even be sleeping in when you know you shouldn't sleep in, going to bed too late and staying up, doing stuff you shouldn't be doing instead of doing what you should be doing, which is sleeping, right? All this is in the negative self-soothing category.
Yeah.
But then I also wanted to get into what's stuff, Benji, that in the short term or long term you can do to soothe your spirit in a healthy way. And we haven't written this down, by the way, guys. This is a conversation. So if you have suggestions, we're all ears. We're not saying this is the definitive list. What we're helping to unpack is this concept of self-soothing and how to delineate when you're soothing something short-term that's negative or when you're actually soothing your soul, which is what wants soothing in the first place.
Right. Yeah, this is really the name of the game in here. It's like figuring out how to, well, the reason we want to soothe is because we're experiencing difficult emotions, usually stress, boredom, loneliness, anxiety. So really the name of the game is identifying it and then finding a way to soothe in a healthy way, productive way. And so, like going back to gossip, I have a habit now, which I always have a habit, which is I will only gossip good things about people. And I make it a point. It's like a point of pride for me, was that I try to only gossip the goodness about people. Even if I might feel negative about someone, I know that there's goodness in them, and I try to highlight that to other people, because then it solidifies it more in my mind. It's like there's goodness in everybody. And then when people hear about it, if somebody hears that I gossiped about them, something good, how much that means to somebody, that someone's talking about me in a good way behind my back. It's a different thing from somebody's just saying something to my face, because then it's like, are you just trying to make me feel better? But it's like a genuine, sincere, like they really believe this. So
yeah, that's true.
But I gossip about you all the time, Andrew, just so you know.
About how lovely my ears are.
Yes, all that stuff.
Really nice ears.
You'll find out someday what I gossip about you, hopefully. But it's like it's good stuff. It's always like, anyways. So I think for me, it's always been, for many years, it was probably phone use, media use. YouTube was probably the hardest thing for me to finally crack the code on and use mindfully and not mindlessly. And then now it's, honestly, I want to say journaling has been my primary way of soothing emotion.
Girl.
That's
nice.
Like, that's not, like, I'm trying to not sound like a total, like, saint, right? Yeah, saint for saying this. But I mean, I'm definitely guilty of self-soothing unproductive ways, but journaling and then talking about people, because those are the two primary ways that people have always dealt with emotions, is connecting and then internalizing, introspection, which is meditating, praying, journaling, and talking with people. That's it. That's how we've always dealt with stuff. And then there's, of course, like moving, aggression, fighting, hunting, that kind of stuff, which also works for some people, but it also doesn't really address the real root of it. It kind of just distracts you for a bit while you go do something, which is better. It's much better to go exercise, right, to soothe. But it also, I know people that can develop addiction to exercise because they don't know how to deal with emotion. So they go and cycle, or they go and run, so they go to the gym, But talking about it and then journaling has been my saviors for sure.
Lost you for a second then. Well, so yeah, I guess we can just start with ourselves, because that's a good, instead of hypothetical, and then give you some other ideas. But sometimes, to be honest, for me, prayer doesn't work. Sometimes it does the opposite. I notice that when I pray, it makes a big difference. So before, I used to pray at night, And I'd actually then start thinking about all the troubles going on in the world and God's sadness, and then it would ruin my sleep. I was like, this is not helpful. So, but I didn't stop praying. I just changed when I prayed and how I prayed. Now, I don't know if I should say this out loud. I guess I'll just, in the vein of High Noon, I'll be fully transparent. We got a dog since being in Vietnam. We have a little dog out here. And so every morning at about 6 o'clock, he lets us know that he wants to go for a walk by being loud. And so I just take him out. We live by the beach. And I go to the beach and I look at the sun and I pray. And it is the most beautiful thing because even on cloudy days, I look over to the sun, and the sun is not my God. I'm not a pagan, don't worry. But it's just a reminder of how blessed we are that we live in perfect distance from the sun to have life on this earth. It's the only known planet that is the exact right distance to be able to support a thriving ecosystem, right? So I just look up and I just think, and I try to talk to spirit world actually. And it's been amazing. So time of day is really great. Great way to start the day. But also talking to my wife about everything. And sometimes she just doesn't care. And so that doesn't work. Because sometimes it's just too much. Or it's a topic that she just could give less of a crap about. I'm like, got it. Let's find somebody else for this, right? But I always start with her. And if her eyes gloss over, then my second thing is I have a very thriving relationship on WhatsApp with one friend in particular, where we can easily send 20 to 30-minute messages to each other, and we're just unloading, unpacking our life, and we are always happy to give and receive these long messages. So for me, it's like therapy because I can talk it out and recap how is my life and what's going well and what's not. And then to hear his feedback and then to hear about his life is such a tremendous way of soothing. It soothes my soul to speak in long form. Because one side, and maybe, well, you speak kind of Japanese, but one downside to an international marriage is there's just a limit to how much my wife could ever understand me. Certain references. So I need to speak to other people who were born and raised in the West for certain other things. But talking to people is super important. Those are mine. But and meditation, I wanted to get into this because when you're talking about self-soothing, there's nipping a discomfort in the bud, right? So I'm feeling uncomfortable. What's a productive way of soothing my soul in this moment? But then there's also preventative soothing. That's what meditation is for me. It's when I meditate twice a day, morning and evening, I'm a lot less irritable throughout the day and I need less soothing because I've already done it. It's just like you don't need to take that emergency shower because you smell terrible if you're taking general good care of of yourself, if you have good habits and you have regular showers, right? So it really is like a shower for the spirit for me. So meditation is a preventative form of self-soothing so that I don't get into trouble in life. And so there's that. But obviously, when you feel lost, when you're having big life questions, what does it all mean? This kind of stuff. The Word of God, doing hundoke, everybody. You cannot get that from any other source other than these timeless words that are connected to not just your immediate struggle and concern, but to think about 1,000 years from now. You think anybody's going to care about how much money is in your bank account 1,000 years from now? Do you think anybody cares about that 1,000 years ago? No. This is just a very transient concern. And in the context of eternity, which is what God's word is, it's about eternity, how to live and guidance for eternity. It puts everything into a lot better context. So the word of God is extremely important. Anything else that you can think of that your guys do that soothes their spirit in a more meaningful way?
I just think about it like 1,000 years ago. What did our ancestors do, right? Because the default is phone technology. Unfortunately, that's the default. And so if we remove that and drugs and alcohol,
well, I'm not going to do that. Let's get clear. I will quit porn, but not heroin. You son of a gun.
You can keep heroin. officially. Dupinoque and heroin. That's our advice.
Which one first?
Oh, that'd be fun.
That's going to get clipped and used against us for years.
Yes, and then we'll laugh at it because we called it, right? But yeah, I think just historically, what have we done before the advent of supernormal stimuli, like everything? Yeah, reading for sure. I mean, we didn't have books most of human history or know how to read, so, but it helps, right, to put context to eternity and life. And
but
then,
the right words, I'm telling you, like my son, I had to cut him off of reading a little bit because he was using that to soothe in the wrong way. He was using it as a drug. He was just reading Harry Potter or whatever. He read all the Harry Potter books in a month, last month. I've never read that much in my life. That's over 1 million words, actually. The series is over 1 million words. That he's probably read more than me at this point.
Wow.
But reading can get tricky, and even self-help is a very dubious section of the library, because if it was really that great, you wouldn't need so many books, right? It's more like this feeling that somebody else has the answers, and they're helpful in terms of like breadcrumbs through life, and just like a little nudge, a little extra guidance is okay. But I think a lot of people are actually, in a way, soothing themselves in the wrong way through self-help, because it's kind of like the blankie. Somebody else is going to answer these deep questions for me. Actually, that nobody else can. They're your deep questions, and you got to find your way into the depths of yourself to find comfort within yourself. Other people can give you tricks and tips along the way, no problem. But reading is just like anything else. The right stuff at the right time in the right quantity.
It's a really subtle addiction for sure, especially self-help. Even more than books, like just the whole self-help industry and social media. And it's like, they know, like they're trying to profit off of people, and they know, guys, like, come on.
I mean, bookstores are for profit.
So. Yeah, well, books are a different story, because it's not a marketing machine. Some of them are, where it's like, okay, you read one book and it's a series, and you read another, and they're trying to get you to. But the really good books last the test of time, and you could study it over and over and over and get new things from it. There's some books in Hainan we've read that we stand by. Actually, we should probably give a review of
Good to great, baby. Good to great. Change their lives.
Great, unwanted, divine principle, core of the universe. There's a few that really helped us a lot, right, in our organization. But those are like study manuals. They're not an endless, mindless funnel of content that is trying to take our attention. It's trying to be helpful and change your life and organization within one book. That's its goal, not to keep you coming back and paying money. So I want to say I was an addict to self-help for many years, a long time, until I realized I was like, man, I don't know how to be motivated without this. I don't know how to go to the gym without listening to something beforehand. You know what I'm saying?
Somebody screaming in your face.
Yes. But it's really subtle, but it's insidious, and it's constantly not helpful, because like you're saying, that motivation has to come intrinsically. Yeah. I think a good litmus test is, are we able to just sit with ourselves and muster motivation to do something? If not, then I think there's like some kind of soothing or dependency that's needed just to live. And I don't think that's a way to live at all.
Agreed. So, yeah, I mean, think about the fact that fantasies and your desire to want to escape, oh man, somebody just started a loud engine, comes from an emotion that wants to be worked on and dealt with. And then also think about the fact that soothing your soul requires you to have emotional stability. So whatever activity it is, it should connect you back to yourself, not take you away from yourself. So this is, I think, a good kind of delineating factor in, are you soothing the body or the soul? Is it bringing you back to yourself, or is it making you want to stop being yourself, right? And again, movies can do that too. Movies can make you feel like the hero of the story and makes you feel more powerful. And in small quantities or the right amount, movies are great. But movies can also make you want to be somebody else and get stuck in this fantasy of want to be like Kanye West, man. This dude really believes that he's a superhero. He keeps on saying it. I think he just needs to chill out and realize he doesn't need to be special. He just needs to receive love, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a great example of like, yeah, to feel like a superhero in your own story is great, but you can take it a little bit too far. So in terms of soothing your soul, the classics, things that connect you back with your spirit, things like hunduke, meditation, prayer, connecting with other people, classics. All of which you can do with High Noon, by the way. But if you have your own community, utilize that community. But it should connect you to three things: yourself, God, and other people. And if you're using things to those ends, then they are helping you. Right? Yeah. And don't tell me that, okay, well, drinking helps me to connect with people. No. Drinking masks all of your insecurities. They don't go away. They just mask them so that you have fake confidence. It's called liquid confidence, to have the conversations that you should be having sober but are too chicken to. So you're not resolving anything. Again, you're having a vacation from yourself in your own body through drugs and alcohol. That's what that is. But yeah, think about those classics. And then if you have suggestions, please, we just want to kind of give you some things, food for thought, so that you can live with more intentionality. That is at the heart of everything that we do, is we want you to figure out what you want and then to live intentionally so that you can live like that. And that hopefully that's aligned with God. And if not, we'll give you some time and realize that there is no other way. If you create your own life without God, you're really on shaky grounds, and eventually you're going to run into really tough times. But that's not our job. Our job is to help you identify what it is that you want, what your values are, and how to help you live up to that.
Yep.
Okay, so anything, Benji, before we go?
We can bypass all that. Shortcut, get off all social media.
Yeah, and just live in a box. We have High Noon boxes now. They're human-sized boxes. They were just repurposed refrigerator boxes, and we can put your name on the outside, and you just sit in them.
Nah.
It's a new strategy we're coming up.
Nah, man. I stand by this. It's changed my life. Really has. I feel really
I like
proud.
it. I like it.
No.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. If you have anything that you'd like to add to our list, or anything you'd like to contend even, we're open for contention. Please let us know. And we'll see you when we see you. Peace.
Bye.